listening to the 14th source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplin.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses. In the episode for Friday, October 6th, 2023. Andrew, I have an announcement to make.
Oh, what's up?
It's relevant to both of our interests. Although I don't know how excited you are, but considering the general context, I think you're excited. We got to a point watching Deep Space Nine that it was made clear to us as we continued our Star Trek adventure that, hey, you know what started right after the episode of DS9 you watched this week was? I'm like, what's that? And I was told that Voyager started. And so we're like, can't have enough Star Trek. We started Voyager. I wanted to say 2 episodes in, but that's mostly how Paramount Plus presents it, because the pilot is 2, but we watched the pilot and the pilot movie, let's just call it, and then episode 3, which so far so good. The premise is super interesting. The characters so far are pretty good. At least the main ones. There's like generic white dude. What's his name? Paris. Like the most. I'm like, honestly, we've only seen, I guess technically 3 episodes, but every time that he comes on screen, we're like, what? Is that like just a background guy? Why is he talking now? And then we're like, oh yes, no, okay, I remember this guy all of a sudden. It's like a weird face blindness. But generally, the premise is interesting so far. I know you have thoughts about Voyager. I actually guess the question I had coming into here is like, if you were on board early on, kind of how quickly did you fall off? Not that I'm planning to or expect to, but kind of like for you, when did it kind of fall off the rails for you, if at all?
That's a good question. I can say I can remember when it came out, because my father, the job he had at the time, he would basically download he found like I'm going to use the term website. I think it was the website for like Paramount, where they had QuickTime movie versions of the trailers for each episode. Okay. And he would download them and bring them home from work. And you know, it's funny to be like, wow, yeah,
benefit like a state job right there. Yeah.
Because they had fast bandwidth, you know, at the office.
Right. T1? Did they have a T1?
I have no idea. Probably, actually. So he'd bring them home, and I remember watching them. Like I'd put them on my computer, and I'd watch it. Oh, this is exciting, you know. Mm-hmm. In fact, I still distinctly remember one of the trailers for an episode that you're actually going to get to soon. So I guess it tells you it's the 5th episode.
There we go.
I don't know. I think I actually watched the whole show, although it's weird because maybe I didn't. I'd have to check the timing. When I say that, because as I think about it, there are episodes I clearly haven't seen, or at least I hadn't. I've now rewatched. I think I've seen all of them now. Mm-hmm. But it's weird because as I try to do a rewatch, I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what this is.
Which is valid. I mean, I've definitely seen shows again for the first time, or movies as well. I mean, whether you've seen it or not is irrelevant. Whether it made an impact maybe is the more valid question. But yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. But
no, it's fine. It's fine. It's
as you know, we'll be roping you into this adventure, so I'm sure memories will stir. And pieces will snap together for you as we go. But
yeah, I will say that Voyager is the kind of show where there was a premise. I think sometimes they didn't know what it was. I would say, if nothing else, they didn't really have like a unified writers' room. In so much that, like, I will say the first season, the one thing I would say is watch like the character of Captain Janeway, and in terms of like the things that, like, it's like, this is the thing we do, this is the principle that matters, and then like 4 episodes later apparently it doesn't, you know, and then it does again. I remember the idea that like she felt indecisive because the different writers, it's like they didn't coordinate about what that was, and that's the one I remember a lot in the first season or 2.
Yeah, it's funny because especially in early seasons, not that I'm deep into Deep Space Nine, I feel like there was something about that with Cisco as well, a little bit, because I think most of it was spurned by like, okay, he's not Picard, he's not Picard, but he's also like the captain, so to speak. But no, but he's not Picard. So sometimes he makes very moral decisions. Other times he's like, let's go under the table on this. And maybe there's more consistency there, but like it felt like really like there's a lot of swinging around. But I also mostly chalked that up to being like, oh, it's early in the show. Everybody's trying to figure everything out, right? We'll see. We'll see. There was a bit of a nostalgia thing right away. It's like, oh, it's kind of cool. Again, nothing. We're actually loving Deep Space Nine, but like, it's kind of cool being back on a ship. There's something fun about that. Again, we're only 3 episodes deep, so I'm not going to put all my bets onto this. But yeah.
Well, and it's not like I said. While it may have some episodes you'll be like, woof, that was a stinker. I'd say that like I can remember the season finale or the series finale. I remember it being like a fulfilling episode.
Oh, okay.
I like it. I do watch it every now and then. And there are also some really, really interesting episodes they do throughout the show.
Yeah.
So I didn't expect you to pivot to do the watch them contemporaneously thing.
I think it was mostly spurred on just because, like I said, more Star Trek is never bad, but also because of the premise of Voyager, it's not like, oh, you have to like watch these episodes, back and forth to like get the whole story. That it's just some, if you want to just take a break from Deep Space Nine for a couple nights, you got Voyager on the back burner. I mean, right now we also have Lower Decks. So that's exciting, right. And it's going to be a while before we get some new Strange New Worlds. But it's just nice to have Star Trek. That's it.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan. Voyager's the last one to get 7 full seasons, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Enterprise didn't get that. Wonder why?
Oh no, it didn't. It didn't. I'm not even going to make any jokes about what that show got.
Well, then, speaking of surprising outcomes or unsurprising outcomes, I'm not sure. We'll find out this week. We're gonna kind of put the vehicle into low gear and just kind of chill and hang out by discussing our respective weeks in geek. And from what I understand, it's kind of a TV heavy week this week for the both of us. So why don't you take the wheel, so to speak, and let us know what your week in geek was this week, Andrew.
All right, I've been doing a lot of stuff, but I want to narrow the focus on a show I just watched on the Netflix.
Oh,
yeah, Netflix show. Netflix. They still make shows, I guess.
Well, this is great. We're gonna have 2 Netflix weeks in geek here. This is great.
Leaks in geek.
So
we're
not eating onions.
I watched. It's not a leak.
What's a leek? Is that an onion? I thought it was an onion.
No, it's a leek. Vegetables. Anyway.
Yes.
Root vegetables. Anyway.
Is it a root vegetable?
I believe so.
It is a vegetable.
Anyway, so the show I watched on Netflix. Actually, I've been watching.
It's in the same genus as fucking onions. Fucking fuck you, buddy.
I've been watching actually several Netflix shows, but I don't want to discuss the other one.
Okay.
I want to discuss Power Rangers Cosmic Fury.
Oh, okay. Another Power Rangers episode. Here we go.
So Power Rangers Cosmic Fury, it's the sequel to Power Rangers Dino Fury, which is the show that they did 2 seasons of that released on Netflix. So I think at some point Hasbro or whatever the licensing of that show is, they basically handed it off to Netflix. So Dino Fury had been produced by Netflix. And now Cosmic Fury was produced. They also a couple of months ago they released Power Rangers Once and All, basically like a sequel to the original 1994 Power Rangers, like bringing back the old people, except the ones that are dead. And
wow, okay, yeah, it's true.
And so this new show is like I said, it's ostensibly a sequel to, and it features the same main cast as Dino Fury. It actually pulled what I like to call an oops. No, they did something they haven't done in a while. So I've talked about Sentai shows and Power Rangers, right? Power Rangers was always, they basically took this Japanese show and then filmed live American actors and then cut the Japanese footage. Dino Fury was no different. They took, I forget the show they took, and they cut, American actors into it. Now, with Cosmic Fury, they're keeping the same cast, they're using robot footage from a different show, and then they created custom new costumes for the characters. So this is actually probably the most like American work show they've done, arguably ever, because actually it's not even that they're reusing the costumes from the previous show. They made all new costumes and weapons and gadgets and stuff. So this is it's actually a weird one where it is probably like the most uniquely American Power Rangers since maybe the Power Rangers movie in 1995.
It took them 30 years to get here. Good job, guys.
And I'm just gonna I'm gonna be upfront. I'm gonna start. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's very good. I would actually argue it's bad. While it had some moments, like some fun stuff, I don't know who this show is for. Right, the Sentai shows universally were targeting kids. It was a toy commercial, right? It was here's the show, you can go buy the toys. And Power Rangers, that's what it was too. Although they kind of went weird at times. But it was here's a show for the kids and then go buy the toys.
Right.
I get that. And the both Power Rangers and Sentai like handled the narratives and everything differently. Like I think Sentai always took itself more seriously because they realized that's what they do, right? I assume that they think maybe like the parents are watching, so they don't want to be completely stupid all the time. Although sometimes they're pretty stupid. Power Rangers, on the other hand, originally was just like actually garbage. It's just garbage, right? Not a good show. I watched it as a 13-year-old, but it wasn't good. I've tried rewatching the original. I struggle. Eventually later,
but it's not made for you.
It's not made for me. Eventually, Power Rangers started having like more. Like they hired writers, like they thought about what the writing should be because, that's what you do. This show though, they have writers. I don't want to pretend like they're going back to the garbage that was 1993, except. Right? So one of the features of this new show, they brought back David Yost, Billy Cranston, the Blue Ranger. He's a part of the main cast as the Blue Ranger.
Oh, really?
They brought back Lord Zed, who was the villain from 1994. He's the villain of the season.
Really? Wow.
They brought back.
It's funny. I'm like, wow. They brought back David Yost. Can he still do those moves? And I'm like, wait, no. A lot, especially
Well, he did some stuff when he was.
He's going to be doing 20. The cartwheels and karate kicks.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
He did not.
I'm like, come on, Dan.
Man, he's like 50.
He never had to do that, but
well, he did. They all because they did stuff when they weren't in costume, right? He does not in this show.
That's true.
Only the costumed Blue Ranger fights.
Good for him.
So it's a weird thing where they're really leaning on. We're bringing back stuff from the original. Now they also have some stuff from other shows, like they bring back the character of Mick Canick from Ninja Steel. That's fine, but they also they make references to they have I think a reference to not Go Buster, what's it called, Grid Battle Force, which was a couple of years ago. But what I would say more than anything, the theme here is it's like they want like a multiversal, coherent universe of Power Rangers where it all comes together. It's all we're bringing back the original folks and stuff. You're fighting the original bad guy, Lord Zed. And they like
Lord Z in America.
Lord Zed in America actually. And even
ironically, Lord Z in Europe. To
the point where there's like a whole subplot of the show where Lord Zed invades some planet that's revealed to be. And I guess if you're a deep Power Rangers fan, it's the home planet of Zordon from the original series, who like gave his life energy to turn everyone good or some shit. But like, it's like this deep lore stuff. They really focused on the Morphin Masters, who are the people that maintain the Morphin grid, And in fact, they actually even Zordon ostensibly makes a sort of appearance. And it's like all this stuff where you're like, and actually they have a character from Dino Charge, which I love Dino Charge, so that's okay. But it's like, I'm watching it, I'm like, who is this for? Like, who's the audience that they're targeting with this? Like, with Lord Zed, who's, I'm sorry, like, it's someone's weird muscle fetish daddy of a villain. Like, what is that? Who's that? Who's that for? Like, what do you like? You think the kids give a shit about Lord Zed?
I mean, yeah.
And I don't know. It's so weird. And also, like, it's like they want this to be Star Wars or the MCU. And it's like,
right.
I hear you, and I get that Star Wars is also just a toy commercial, but guys, it's Power Rangers. Like,
right. Well, I mean, one of the standout criticisms of a different franchise, one that you just brought up, really stood out to me because I remember when the prequels came out for Star Wars, and people in our age group were like, "What the fuck is this bullshit?" And I remember your dad, to bring him up again, he's like, "Yeah, it's fucking Star Wars. It's fucking dumb." Right? And we were like aghast, right? Or at least when you told me that's what he said. Everything's, I think you hit it on the head. I think it sees what the MCU is able to accomplish. And so it's like, oh, we got 30 years of bullshit behind us. We can make it a contiguous continuity. And so they're trying. And yeah, and which it's equal parts at this point, trying to be the new MCU and be a nostalgia play, right? And I guess the question you might be having is, can you have both? Because I've groused about the MCU. It's like, I don't want to have to see like 3 TV series and remember what happened in Thor 2 to understand what happens in the next big Avengers movie. I'm like, right. But that's a small ask compared to, you got to go watch 30 years of bad TV.
of I would say, like, predominantly not very good television.
But the question is this: is it accessible? I mean, not in terms of, like, you know, themes and does it hold up, but like, is it easily is previous Mighty Morphin Power Rangers accessible? Like, do people have easy access to it?
I know some of it's on Netflix. I don't know the extent. I know the original MMPR is, but I don't actually think all the shows are.
Right.
And here's the thing, though, that I would say that, like, with something like Star Wars or even the MCU, the ask of, like, of if you're going to have something where, like, this is going to appeal to someone who's so invested in the universe that they know, like, everything, right? Like, one could compare, like, Ahsoka, which just wrapped up their first season. That show kind of asks a lot of, like, have you seen some Rebels and some Clone Wars, right? But that's not 30 years of bad children's television, right? Like, that's, and I mean, I think about it, like, and who would be the person that has been watching Power Rangers since contemporaneous with release since 1993? Like, you know, like, because, like, if you imagine the way the Sentai shows do it, like, you watch you probably watch a couple years when you're a kid.
How many fans have they held on
because you grow up a bit, like, right? And maybe you go back and, like, but it's not like I can't imagine there's a big audience of people who've been like, no, I watch every Power Rangers every week. You know, I honestly, you find people that will have like a 3-year footprint. I get it. This is just weird because the footprint they're really targeting right now is the original 3 years. Which those people are, spoiler, in their 40s now, right?
Right.
And the only thing I could think of is like, well, that's because they want something that appeals to the parents that their kids can watch with them, you know, so that way the parents get excited. And I'm like, that would make sense, but the show's also not written well, and they make bizarre choices. Look, I shared this with Dan earlier today. One of the big reveals of the show is one of the characters becomes a new color of Power Ranger that we've never seen before. It is, they don't describe it. He's actually described as the Zenith Ranger, but he is the beige Ranger. His color is beige. It's I mean, like, beige. Like, you know what the Japanese never did? Make a beige Ranger, because they knew they needed colors that popped. And America's like, you know what we could do? The opposite of that. Now, I will actually say they also introduced the Orange Ranger, which has never been done before. Like, okay, sure. So yeah, it's a weird show. And I would say that like as an actual show, it suffers a lot from the fact that it only had 10 episodes. But it's like they wanted to jam in a whole Japanese Sentai show's worth of monsters. So they'll just have like monsters walk in and explode. And you're like, well then what is this? You know, it's a weird thing because again, as someone, I don't want to say I'm a connoisseur of Sentai shows, but I've watched a few and I've watched some Power Rangers quite a lot. And I'm like, oh, this is like you made a lot of choices and most of them are terrible.
You become one, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yes, go.
So I have two questions kind of coming around on here. So they're bringing in original Power Ranger stuff, as you made clear. Question of who is it for? I know that they've had some success on the comic book side of things. I don't know who that audience is. I don't know if that audience is also watching Netflix stuff. But I guess the question I had is, yes, they're bringing in characters from the original series. I think the more pertinent part is, are they relying on like plot points that happened in 1995? Or is it just like, here's Lord Zed, he's a bad guy, and doesn't he look familiar? Wink, wink.
They did definitely mention some plot elements or some things from like 97.
Yeah. Like from the movie, you think, or actually from the show?
No, what was like the death of Zordon, which I think was 96 or 7, that comes up multiple times. Okay. And somehow that they need to do like, they reference it quite a bit in the last 2 episodes. And so but other than that, it's not like, no, if you don't know about, you don't even need to know anything about what Lord Zed did, just that he's there, you know? Right. I mean, actually, I will, to your comment about the comic books, that's actually important because one of the characters they feature, I mentioned they feature a character from Dino Charge, which was, I think, the 2015 show, 2014. They actually feature a character that, while the character was introduced in Dino Charge, he actually, in the comics, becomes what is known as the Dino Charge Dark Ranger. And in the show, he appears and then actually morphs into the Dino Charge Dark Ranger, which had never been featured on television, on film before. So they do a comic book thing pretty hard, which again that's it's interesting, but like, you know, if you didn't read the comic books, I just knew about it because I'd read about it. But that'd be a thing where like if you don't read the comic books, and you're like, what the hell is that? So I don't know. I do really think they're trying to pull a Marvel on Power Rangers, and I just think it's a bizarre choice. But also, I would say, I talked to my partner a lot about this. I actually think now, and there's a reason they can't because the actor killed himself. But I actually think if they wanted to do a comic book thing, the implementation of what's his name, Lord Dakon. The idea that there's the alternate universe evil version of Tommy Oliver, who basically like conquers universes, and that he becomes like a villain in the comic books. Like that was a comic book story they could have done if they wanted to make it, rather than bringing back muscle daddy Lord Zed. So it's, I don't know, like, and I just don't know who the target audience is, and I ended this season thinking like, wow, I hope they stop. Like, I hope this is if they just take a break, breathe, and start over.
So the last question I had is, and I don't want you to feel bad, but like at this point, which one have you seen more of? Power Rangers or like original Sentai content?
So I've watched 3.5 seasons of Sentai shows. So that's like they're each like 52 episodes. And I've
right.
Let's see. It's tough because I've seen more seasons of Power Rangers, but they're shorter. So in terms of like minutes, or even like half-hour blocks, I'd have to like do math. But I've watched a lot of these shows. I admit it. I love the premise. I actually think that the premise is great. I mean, I think it's so great a premise that we see it in lots of things, right? We see it in comic books, we see it in movies, anime. We're obviously captured the same thing. Like we know we have Voltron and stuff like it. So it's not a bad idea. And
which came
Sentai
first?
Shows did.
Which came first?
Oh yeah, no,
well,
Voltron.
I mean,
yeah. Oh, so yeah, but I think Oh, sorry.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I wasn't asking a question. I was saying
Voltron,
which came
but
first.
The original
period.
Sentai was like in the early 70s, I think. But yeah, I think they're a cool premise. I just think the execution's done really poorly here. And yeah, I don't know. So I think it's a tie though, for which I've seen more of. I do think that my general perception is that the Japanese they handle it better. While they will do, like, I think the idea that every year they do a different show. Sometimes the shows are like serious, sometimes they're silly, which I think, like, and you could not like one or the other. Whereas like Power Rangers is always they're all samey with like a deviation in the band that, like, sometimes they get closer to being like a serious show that might be worth watching, and then sometimes they're like, actually, let's do garbage.
So they've always maintained this sort of continuity?
Well, the original series of Power Rangers they did for like 7 years. It was the same cast over and over again. I don't think I actually would. Right. I'd have to. Well, they'd change out people, but it was the similar.
Barring. Right. And barring death, I know they lost.
But she didn't die. She quit. She died later. Yeah. No, I think though that I'd have to look, because actually that's I have a big gap in the early years. I don't know if it's one that I'm intending to rectify. I think I'm okay with it.
What?
So I couldn't tell you how they transitioned to doing the new show every year, and then when they started kind of trying to connect them again. But this is definitely this is them really leaning back into its one big multiverse, as opposed to what they used to do more often was maybe 1 or 2 episode crossovers where they would like cut in footage. They would get basically the crossover movies from the Sentai shows and turn that into an episode. But the show, other than that, was still a standalone. Whereas this is like a whole season of crossover. So I don't know. Anyway, it was a weird experience. I don't know what to think about it. I do definitely want to watch more Sentai shows, though. That's my takeaway. Which movie?
The movie with the big 30th anniversary movie of MMP.
Oh, I already watched it. I watched that months ago. Oh. Yeah.
Oh,
it was.
Sorry.
That was it was
good.
I mean, it was better than the original Power Rangers, but that was a movie where I said, like, wow. This always has been some of the worst work they've done, and I mean, with all due respect to the actors, like, most of them aren't really actors. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, that was my Week in Geek, Dan. What about you?
No, I feel bad. I'm gonna speak not fondly of another Netflix show.
I've got a theory about that, but
I've yes, I think I see where you're pointing. I got over my bullshit a little bit. I've talked in the past about how I couldn't get past the first episode of Netflix's Castlevania animated series because I was so put off by the animation. Because
you're put off by something else. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, I got over my bullshit. I'm like, okay, I know what this is, and I know what's trying to be. So it's. The thing that bothered me initially was that it's very much trying to present itself as the Castlevania anime made by an animation company in Texas. And so I'm like anime is cartoons. It's not a separate medium, and we call it anime because that's what Japanese call cartoons, right? And the just thing is what is an animated show in Japan is can be a lot more varied and interesting and unique than kind of how we defined animation here in the States. Same thing with the fight that people have about, like, is manga comics? Yeah, yes, it is. It's just that's what they call comics. But what bothers me a little bit is saying, like, well, we're making an anime. I'm like, but you're all dudes in Texas, and like not Japan, which is where they call animated content anime. Anyway, that was the bullshit I was getting. I felt like super appropriation. I'm like, this is just dumb, and it kind of looked shoddy in parts. Give it a year or two, go back into it knowing what it is. I'm like, I watched the first episode. I'm like, all right, I see what they're doing here. And it's not bad. And I watched episode 2, and I'm like, okay, I think, and I went and looked up, I'm like, I think they're adapting Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, to and was confirmed through my research. I'm like, oh wow, this is cool. That's like before Castlevania Symphony
cool
Night. This is kind of the good Castlevania. Yeah. I'm like, this is awesome. And as I kept watching, I recognized the guy playing Dracula, Graham McTavish, this British actor who has done a lot of really good work. If you saw him, you'd recognize him. Great voice, perfect guy to play Dracula. He was in the Hobbit movies as one of the dwarves, as was the guy that plays Trevor Belmont, Richard Armitage. Armitage.
He was also a dwarf?
I'm not sure. Yes, he was. Was he? Yes, he was. He was like the.
I didn't see that movie.
There's lots of dwarves in a Hobbit. But I started getting tired by the end of like exhausted by the end of season 1. The problem is season 1 is 4 episodes long.
I was exhausted by the show after 4 episodes.
It's funny thinking back to when the episode aired, because it's when the season dropped, because people were like really positive on season 1 and like, when's season 2 dropping, and like, is it going to happen? And like, I'm kind of surprised that season 1 was so well received, because nothing happens. The end of the finale is literally just the heroes of Castlevania 3 finally getting together. Spoilers. And there's actually no real, like, there is like a big fight, but it's like, it's a non-event. But that's not the problem I had with it. Everything kind of confirmed itself as I started watching season 2. I'd given season 1 a break, and I came back to season 2. I'm like, let's give it a shot. I don't hate it. But there's something off, and I don't know what it is. I think I know what it is. I got to the end of episode 2 of season 2, and season 2 has 8 episodes. And I'm like, I think I'm done. And part of it is I think part of it comes back to my initial reservation with it. Not so much that it's a quote unquote anime made in America. I don't particularly care about that. But it feels like a show trying on a suit and then pretending to be someone else. And like, it doesn't feel like it knows what anime is, but it thinks it does. And so it's trying to be cool and like edgy and edgy in terms of visuals, and like dynamic in terms of visuals, while also trying to be like an American self-aware meta comedy. And I just don't think those ingredients mix very well. And most of it comes down not to the animation, but to the writing, which I think is my biggest problem with it. It feels like the writers are doing their own thing, and then they're just taking that wholesale and giving it to the animation studio, and the two sides of the production line don't meet, because it feels like the writers don't trust the animation, and so they're just overwriting. There's like so much dialogue in this. Dialogue that has no real definition to it. There's a scene it's episode 2 of season 2, where the 3 protagonists, Trevor, Sifa, I believe her name is, and Alucard, are hanging around a campfire talking about how bad Dracula is. And the best way I can describe what happens is that it's a monologue spoken by 3 people. In that one person says a chunk of dialogue, and then it just jumps to another person, but the tone of the voice, the written voice, I should say, the information doesn't change. It's just like they picked up, like playing a game of popcorn in a sense. They picked up where the person left off and then hops to the next person. And there's no like distinction of character in how they're written. They're all just in one scene, trying to be super dark and super heavy and super serious. And in the next one, Alucard is saying to Trevor, "Fuck you." And then Trevor replies, "Eat my shit." I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing here?
Wait, does he actually say "eat my shit"?
Yes. Or something or "eat shit." The personal pronoun might not be in there, but it's
Well, I'd say that makes a difference.
Either way, they're insulting each other with very modern parlance. And I think the natural defense to this is like, well, Castlevania is dumb, Dan. I'm like, yeah, it is. It is. But the show wants to be cool and dumb at the same time. and that sort of, it doesn't feel like they figured out how to do that to the point where I don't care about anybody. And this applies to every character. I'm harping on the main characters specifically, but all the dialogue just feels so superfluous and useless and just trying to fill air, to the point, like I said, where I don't feel like they trust what the animation studio can do with actual moving pictures to actually set the scene, to present character, to push the story along, unless someone's talking. And it's just exhausting because of it, right? And so that's just kind of my thing. It's just it's bad, and it sucks because it made me think of Castlevania 3. Obviously, they do elaborate a bit on the story because it's Castlevania 3, which is a game released for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Not a lot of story there, but what they do flesh out in terms of the basics is kind of cool, especially what they do with Dracula and Alucard and sort of their relationship. But then they just open up the floodgates from the writers' word processors, and it doesn't feel like there's any real editing going on in terms of the dialogue. Mostly, maybe this is happening because, and I'm speculating here, the writer they got for the show is like a big name, quote unquote, Warren Ellis, also a problematic writer. Look him up. But I could see an animation studio saying, "We got Warren Ellis. Just let him do what he does." I'm like, well, if this is what he's doing, don't let him do what he does. But I was thinking back to the original game, and this makes me think of other like sort of 8-bit and 16-bit games that aren't known for like deep or complicated stories, but the stories serve the purpose, and the minimalistic storytelling that's forced on the games by the limitations of the technology. Mm-hmm. And it felt like the production team here saw that as a liability instead of as like, oh, this is actually part of the charm, and didn't see that as a tool they can use to tell their story as well. Like, because that's part of what makes not necessarily Castlevania, but like Metroid, for example. Part of what makes Metroid charming is how austere it is. And if all of a sudden we had an animated series or movie based on Metroid and everybody's talking all the time, we'd be saying this isn't Metroid at all. And
right, Samus is like making fart jokes.
Right, saying telling Ridley, eat shit, Ridley, or eat my shit. We'll confirm or deny what was actually said. It doesn't matter. It's stupid either way. But then I think there's also the argument, like, well, okay, Symphony of the Night is also an inspiration, and that the writing's not good there, Dan. I'm like, that's mostly a consequence
what
of
is a man?
Translation, right? Than it is maybe writing. But even then, that game is from what, 97?
97, I think. Yeah.
Like, video game writing has come a long way, as well as, animated writing in stateside.
Right.
That, like, if they said, what is a man but a miserable pile of secrets? Like, that'd be cool to see in the show. But it would be even cooler if they're able to work that in and have it be awesome as well. That kind of wink and nudge, but also like making that seems like the fun part of writing something like this would be the puzzle solving of like, how can we make this, what happens in these games actually make sense and be a good story to tell in an animated medium. Right. And it just kind of feels like no one was taking it. Not that I want it to be serious. It doesn't have to be, but like they got to pick a lane instead of trying to do everything in a show. But I might be wrong because everybody loves this show. So maybe give it another 2 years and I'll come back to it and get to season 3.
Well, and I haven't looked at critical response for Power Rangers, but I wonder if like, is it just me? Like, am I just a guy who's like, wow, this was shit? Are we so old that we've become relics? Who knows?
Yeah.
I'll admit, I myself have not watched Castlevania. I've seen clips of it as someone else was watching it. Mm-hmm. I'll admit it seems like something I would want to watch, but I think when it first came out, I started watching it. I was turned off by it, and I don't know why. I don't watch nearly that as much animated content. And I don't think it's that I have an aversion or anything. It's weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think, like I could count on one hand animated shows that I've watched in the last 3 years. Right. So I think it's just a preference, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's too bad. But then again, I don't necessarily mourn the loss of a Castlevania show because I wasn't really wanting one in the first place. That's another kind of thing. Like, I'm not too upset by it. Maybe if it were like a Metroid thing, because I have become a super fan of that, I'd be more invested. But also, I think I've been deadened because I'm a Transformers fan, and I'm like, well, it is what it is. I like what I like, and I don't care if it's and I don't have to pay attention to stuff that's bad. Maybe that's a cynical way to look at the world, but as a nerd in 2023, maybe you got to be cynical. I don't know. It was popular enough for there's a new Castlevania that's out, Castlevania Nocturne,
which is now more directly the story of either Rondo of Blood or Symphony of the Night.
Richter Belmont?
Yeah, okay. Richter. Which, okay, and the funny joke about this, I told you that, for those who don't know, the Castlevania series, the first game of the series, Castlevania, comes out in, 1980 something. Yeah. Features a character named Simon Belmont. Castlevania 3 then introduces Trevor Belmont. And I don't think I knew until within the last 6 months that Trevor was actually was meant as a predecessor to Simon. Right. I didn't know that. I was like, well, that's weird. Why are they not doing a Simon story? And then now they're going from Trevor to Richter. And it's like, well, what about the original guy? And it's like, well, he actually, in retrospect, the original character of Castlevania was just the least interesting member of the family, apparently.
But also, like, when you sent me that, I resisted sending that Chris Pine gif of him saying, "Who gives a fuck?" Because they didn't at the time.
Of course.
Like, it doesn't
matter.
They
did at the time. It's fun. Well, but now it does, right? Like this idea that, it all matters. It's like, and the character from the original game, which they still, like, I think Konami still treats like he's the popular one, right? Because I think when they did Smash Brothers, they used Simon as one of the characters. Yeah. It's like, and also,
Nintendo
of course,
did
using
that.
Captain
Konami couldn't.
Captain and the Game Master, featured Simon Belmont.
Right.
Put an asterisk by that.
Konami's kind of the John Carpenter of video games. They're like, just give me a check. I don't care what you do with it.
You do whatever you want.
Right. So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can find us on other social media, specifically the places that Andrew and I frequent, which means you can find me on Instagram at dbethelcomics, and you can find Andrew on Mastodon at profounddark@dice.camp.
While you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can also take a look at our YouTube page by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube. You may already be there listening to the show as we simulcast in YouTube. If you do listen to the show on YouTube, please feel free to like and subscribe, or as they like to say, ring that bell.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4, both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire. Am I boring you? Am I boring you, Andrew?
No. You can find his music and more at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 attribution license.
If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out even more, though, would be to leave some sort of review, whether a text review or using their proprietary metric helps spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. Breaking news, Andrew. That's me turning papers. I've been holding on this for a whole week. Andrew, I believe you have a correction to make. You doubted me on air that Rocky IV didn't have a robot. Do you have something to say, sir?
Yeah, in the director's cut, there is no robot. I actually don't know if the director's cut has come out. I saw a comment that in the director's cut, the intent is to remove that scene. Yeah, I guess, it's funny. I've seen these Rocky movies, and maybe it's because of the way I watched most of them with my very wonderful roommate in my last year of college, who would actually skip a lot because he just wanted to see the fights in the workout montages. Yep. So like it's very easy that I may have just never seen that scene.
Well, that's fair. I guess.
I just don't know what to say.
It is hilarious that they're like, "Hey, the director's cut. Most important thing, no robot.
Cut that scene."
Well, come on. They should be adding a scene where Ivan Drago fights the fucking robot. Let's be real here. That's what we want.
No, we don't.
No, we don't. Okay, we don't. Maybe Netflix can make an American anime version where the robot says, "Eat shit, drag out." So until American anime ruins another property, dear listeners, don't send your hate mail to criticalrole@gmail.com.
I just like this is a Critical Role.
I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
It'd be great if they start getting emails like
random hate mail.
Did you say something about Castlevania? No? What the hell's going on? Make more merch. That's how I think of Crit Roll. Make more merch.
I'm going to stop recording.
That sounds like a plarn.
Yeah.
Let's roll out.